Good evening, good friends. How are you? I hope you have a wonderful time in these turbulent times, and especially that you're taking care of your health and all your best ones and loved ones are also healthy. I wish you all the best. All of those who are joining us for the first time, welcome, and I look forward to spending with you more time in the future. We left off our conversation, the last one, on the topic of departing from the little forest near the farm where we spent about 2 weeks and are setting our steps on the road to go to the forest where the partisans, where the Jewish survivors, where all kinds of people who ran away from the German oppression and destruction, death and bloodshed have gathered. As evening set on, we began to march. A motley crew of 4 adults, 4 children. We marched, each one carrying a little bit of a bundle of belongings, a little food, toward a destination which we did not know, toward a goal which we did not know if it's going to be realized. Anyway, we began to march, and we marched, and we always had to keep on the side of the road so people shouldn't see us maybe from behind or in the front. And every few meters that we walked, we'd look backwards, look forwards. And we kept on walking in the dark of the night. You have to remember, we were little children. My sister was younger than I. I was next, then my sister and my cousin. All of us were under 9 years old, under 8 years old actually. And so we marched, but we had to, some were slower, some faster. We kind of developed a long line. As we kept on going in the night, suddenly my uncle said, I think there's some people ahead of us. So we stopped in our tracks, ran into the side of the road to hide among the bushes. No one should see us. And we waited, and my uncle and his brother-in-law, Zedel, moved forward to check out to see what was happening. They couldn't see anybody, so they said, let's move on. So we kept on walking, and then all of a sudden we turned around, people were right behind us, a group of adults. We were petrified. They approached us. We couldn't run anymore. And lo and behold, they were actually partisans. They were ahead of us, but they heard us walking behind them, so they stopped and let us get by them, pass them by, and then approached us from behind. They realized who we were, and they came to us and greeted us and said to us a few things of advice how to march, that we made too much noise. I must tell you, I have no recollection of any noise that we made. We were too frightened to say anything or to do anything, but I suppose when you walk and you're not accustomed to walking slowly or quietly, somehow you create some noise. Maybe you stop on a branch and you break it and you can hear it. So they said, be very careful when you walk, don't make any noise. They also advised us in which direction to go and where some of the partisans and Jewish families may be found in the forest. They left us and went ahead, and we kept on going all night long, and every once in a while we stopped. We were exhausted and tired, and naturally the adults had to walk slower because of the children. At the end of the night, as it began to dawn a little bit, we already reached the forest. That was Lipichanskaya Pushcha. The whole region was called Lipochansky Pushcha, or is still called by that name, I presume. And there it was still dark as we walked into the forest, and I remember my uncle Shloime hurt his shin very badly on a branch which was sticking out from the ground. And it was a real terrible scratch. And I know he was in great pain. He never complained about anything, but he kind of cried out quite loud. Anyway, we kept on walking inside the forest, and suddenly the light began to emerge, and we came in a little deeper and deeper into the forest, found some kind of a clearing, and sat down in the forest. When we looked around in the forest, we saw only leaves and branches and trees and grass, not a trace of anything which is edible. No berries, no strawberries or blueberries, anything that grows on the ground. We couldn't find anything which was edible. And so we had to rely on what we brought with us, some potatoes, some slices of bread, and really that's maybe some eggs, I'm not sure. And that's what we had. So we settled down for the day, exhausted and tired. Some of us fell asleep, and we began to more or less adjust to the environment. As dawn broke, the sun kept on shining, and it was, I recall, a very nice, shiny day. It was bright. You could see the beautiful green branches. It was, at that time, at the middle of August, and everything was nice, except there was not a sign of where we could eat anything. Anyway, we settled in and began to orientate about the location and where we can reach other people. In the meantime, my uncle began to scout around the areas to see where we were and how to reach out to some other possible new inhabitants of the forest. As the day progressed, we looked around more, we saw some trees had some kind of red berries on it. The problem was they were wild and not edible, and we were afraid they might even be poisonous. So we wouldn't touch them, and then when we did, it was unedible, and it was like eating the leaves themselves. So my uncle would give us our food, the children. He himself would begin to delay his eating. Instead, he would take a leaf from the trees and take some other dry leaves and rub it off and roll it into a cigar and eat it, smoke it. Instead of eating his meal, he gave it to us. And so we survived the first day and the second day, and little by little we began to more or less get acclimatized to the forest. And then my uncle made contact with some other families in the forest, and we moved to another forest nearby. And there we settled in near a little stream. And the problem was we had to be very careful not to say anything, because the sound carries, number one. Number two, there may be all kinds of people walking in the forest. There were shepherds. There were people who were coming to cut down trees. It was a situation where we were uncertain of what was around the next tree. And therefore, it was also a degree of fear that permeated our very existence. And we also began to worry about food. How do you go about getting food for us to eat? We joined up with some other families, some young people too, And I must say, I really don't remember their names, who they were, but I know there was a few others. And then they began to organize in more or less some kind of a routine. And my uncle began to be a guide for the other Jewish partisans who did not know the area or the people around the farms. And he would take them out to go to visit some farmers individually, or some outskirts, some houses on the outskirts of a village where he knew some farmers because of business connections. We used to buy the land produce from the farmers, and therefore our family knew many farmers. And there they would go out and literally beg for some food. And some farmers were kind enough to give a loaf of bread, others would give some eggs, some would give some potatoes. And so they would come back for the next day, and we had something to eat. Sometimes they used to go away and stay for a whole day, and they came back the second night. As we adjusted more into the life of the forest, my uncle also began to act as a guide for the partisans, for the young people who were constituted the partisan groups of the forest, and he would lead them to specific goals or directions where they had some activities to perform. Sometimes they would go and intercept a caravan of farm products that was being led as a tribute to the town. And sometimes they would go and collect to talk to some farmers about weapons, because we had no weapons, we had no ammunition, we really had nothing to work with or to fight with. And so my uncle was used for that purpose of guiding the young partisans, the young fellows who constituted the initial grouping or the initial beginning of a Jewish fighting force in the partisans. We will continue about life in the partisans in the next weeks, and in the meantime, I hope you will stay tuned to us. Don't forget, I'm talking to you about myself, not only to tell you about my life story, but to hopefully inspire you to join us together to fight anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is a scourge which is a plague, and it infects all mankind unless you stop it, and it strikes as soon as it's possible. So please join us and let us be united against anti-Semitism in order to make it an easier life for all of us. With God's help, we will succeed. Be well. Till next time, au revoir.